So when I say, for instance, that we what that which we resist, we will often become. You know, um, I try not to say it with a sense of judgment. Like it's almost like saying if you if you're if you're chased by this a wild beast or monstrous being or something, and you have a knife, um, if you use that knife, you're likely to hurt yourself. I think it's just in the dynamics of swing that um, in using a knife or a sword as a weapon, the blade is likely to cut you, especially if it's a double-edged sword, right? It's likely to cut you as well. That's not to judge the act or to say it's either right or wrong. It's just to notice something interesting about that materiality, that scenario. And it is true that the French Revolution wiped away kings, but it left thrones. And sooner or later, the people who were told to eat cake eventually went on the throne and reproduced the same realities and that they had fought so hard to conquer, if you will. And I find this interesting, not in the sense that I can lean out and like some Doctor Who figure, traveling through time and space, lean in and say interesting. So I'd like to write a character in a novel that does that. But I feel it's interesting how our greatest actions sometimes reproduce the familiar or re-entrench the status quo. In spite of our best efforts to leave them behind, we end up recreating them, which tells me that there's something far beyond our good intentions, far beyond our goodwill, far beyond choice and strategy and instrumental thinking that works or sabotages us, if you will. And you might not even consider it sabotage if you consider that the self, this human self that we tend to atomize and locate neatly within the confines of human bodies, is greater. It is the metabolism of the self is greater than that single impoverished notion of a boundaried human individual. It's vaster than that. And so there's a lot more at work when we speak about justice or stories or reprisals or resistance than we can talk about. And I mean that literally. There's a lot more at work than we can actually talk about. So the kind of questions I ask, I try to categorize under a banner of what I call post-activism. And by post-activism, I'm not saying there is, I don't mean it in the terms, in the sense with which we say post-colonially, post-racial society or post-colonialism or something like that, in terms of afterwards, Yeah, I mean it in the sense that um, how do we study or how do we lean in to examine the ways we respond to crisis? Like this question about what do I do? Like, I don't know what to do about this or that. What do I do? Where I don't have a way to respond to that. I don't have a solution. I don't have a neat answer. I have a couple of answers, but what I find more interesting is to lean into the question itself, is to examine the materiality of the question and to notice what's happening here. Okay, let me give an example to bring it down from the abstract and bring it to the relatable. I might have shared this story with you, brother, but I don't know. I shared this story many times. I share many stories, but I think it was 2 years ago. I read in a paper, I think I was flying through the States. I can't remember where I saw it, but it was this story about an American lady who walked into a Walmart store and bought herself a new bag, and she took a bag home and opened the bag, and presto, right there inside the bag was a note with Chinese writing on it, And she, of course, she didn't understand it. And so she got someone that did. And what the person translated or transcribed was remarkable. Basically, the note said, I can't remember the words exactly, so I'm paraphrasing, but this was the essence of it, that I'm a slave in China. I'm a prisoner. I'm a prisoner in the cell in China. They make us create bags like this one, and we do it all the time. And if we don't create bags like this, we will be beaten and flogged and sent to our beds without any food. Help us, something like that. It was almost like a note from the child in the cellar in Omela to the people, the citizens outside. And there, relating it to that story, I hope you can start to notice the tensions. She basically started to, I think she said to the reporter, the person who was telling the story, capturing the story, that she would like to do something about this. Like she would like to start a fund or do something about it. It's just that she doesn't know what to do. And I found that really interesting. How we overstate the importance of knowing what to do while losing sight of the things we're already immersed in doing at the moment, the realities we're currently creating. I think it's a symptom of our age of mastery to emphasize knowing, like knowing precedes action. Theory precedes practice. Good theory leads to good practice. It's a cause and effect situation again. And basically she said, I don't know what to do. And I don't, as if she was not already doing something. And I don't need to spell it out for you, brother, but already, you know probably a lot more than I do about capitalism and late stage capitalism and all those terms. Basically, in purchasing the bag from Walmart, she was part of an apparatus that was justifying or creating the conditions for that Chinese prisoner all the way in China to be doing what that Chinese prisoner was doing. And that's the broad entangled reality we're in. That what I'm doing here in India might have radical, unknown, or yet to be known consequences somewhere in Africa or somewhere in the United States. We are immersed in fields and flows and streams of doing. And I think it's interesting that we examine those. Now, I'm not trying to dismiss knowing, like it's good to know what to do, right? It's good to know how to build a house before you start to build a house. I'm not dismissing it out of hand. I'm not trying to create, I'm not trying to speak axiomatically or say that this is a new principle. I never do that. Anything I say has to be contextualized. But it is also good to notice that our knowings are themselves parts of streams of other doings. So the question of how to relate to how to respond to colonization, I don't think we can stay outside or sit as we are in where we are right now and speak about that in a way that will be compelling for those who know how to listen. I can speak about resistance. Resistance sometimes works, brother. I am not against resistance. Sometimes writing does. Sometimes something more modest might help. Who knows? Something like planting or finding other ways of relating with the world around us. I like to speak about, and the kind of activism I like to explore. Maybe what I might call sacred activisms deal with what I call other places of power. Basically, that maybe we shouldn't look to the city hall for salvation. Maybe something transversal needs to happen, something outside of the mold of inclusion or the dialectic of inclusion versus exclusion. Maybe we need to break the entire continuum and find other ways of relating. And that might start with us actually recognizing that we're part of the world that we're trying to understand. And maybe in with-nessing, I use the word with-nessing, not witnessing. with-nessing, maybe in staying with the trouble of our affiliations with ecology, with environment, with place, with context, with limitations, with shadow, with ancestrality, with all of these heaps and heaps of materiality, maybe in noticing that we're part of the compost heap and those we fight against are also part of the compost heap. Maybe that recommends other ways, other creative ways of responding. Who knows? But I resist the urge to speak outside of the context, as if in speaking outside, we could know anything on the inside. Knowledge is intimate. There's no objective knowledge that could categorize, and there goes the urge to categorize again. There's no objective means by which we can say, how do we respond to or help the people in South Dakota? And not that I'm saying that question cannot be asked, but I'm saying we have to ask it with a healthy dose of humility.